It was one of those Oregon nights when the rain doesn't fall. It attacks. The kind of storm that shakes the windows and makes the trees outside my house on Bayview Street bend like they're praying. I was halfway through folding laundry when the power flickered, then steadied again. The house felt too quiet, except for the wind pressing against the glass. That's when my phone rang. The number on the screen made my stomach tighten. Claire. My daughter? I hadn't seen her in weeks. We'd argued the last time we spoke. Something about her new boyfriend, Travis, and how I needed to stop judging her life. I almost didn't answer, but something deep in my chest told me to pick up. Hello. What came through wasn't her voice. It was small, shaking. Grandma? Mommy's on the floor. She won't move. My throat closed. Lucas, honey. Where's your mom? I don't know. She's not waking up. I'm scared. I could hear the storm on his end. Wind howling through what sounded like a broken window. Sweetheart. Listen to me. Are you hurt? No. But it's dark. He locked me in my room. I got out. Grandma. Please come. Please. Then I heard it. A loud crack of thunder. A door slammed. The line went dead. For a second. I couldn't breathe. The rain against my windows sounded like static. I hit redial. Nothing. Tried again. Straight to voicemail. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone. I called Claire's number again. Her recorded voice came through. Too cheerful. Too fake. Hey. This is Claire. Leave a message. I called 3 more times. Same thing. I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door, threw on my raincoat, and shoved my feet into boots. My car sat shivering under the downpour, raindrops bouncing off the hood like bullets. I started the engine and backed out of the driveway, my heart pounding hard enough to drown out the sound of the wipers. The road to Pine Harbor is 45 minutes of narrow, twisting highway. At night, in a storm, it feels twice as long. I drove past the shuttered gas station, the one Mark used to take Lucas to for ice cream on Sundays before the accident. Just thinking his name hurt. My son had been gone 6 years now. Killed instantly when a semi ran a red light. I'd buried my boy and 5 weeks later, my husband, Walter, after his heart gave out from the grief. Now Claire was all I had left. And even she'd started slipping away. The rain hammered harder. Wipers slapped in rhythm with my heartbeat. I kept replaying Lucas's voice in my head. Those few words that didn't sound like any 8-year-old should ever have to say. Mommy won't move. Hold on. Baby. I whispered to the dark windshield. Grandma's coming. Lightning split the sky, lighting up the road just long enough for me to see a fallen branch ahead. I swerved. Tires skidding. The car fishtailed. Then caught traction again. I let out a shaky breath. My phone sat in the cup holder, screen glowing with Claire's name as I tried calling one more time. No answer. I tried texting, I'm on my way. Please pick up. Nothing. For a moment I thought about calling 911 right then. But what would I say? My grandson called from a number I don't recognize and said his mom's on the floor. They'd think it was a prank. I needed to see it myself. As I passed the town limit sign, I noticed something strange. The streets ahead were black. No porch lights. No street lamps. Power outage. The kind that makes even a small town look abandoned. I turned onto Pine Street, the road Claire had moved to 2 years ago when she started dating Travis. I hated that place from the start. Too far from neighbors. Too close to the marsh. The first time I visited, Travis barely looked up from his beer. There'd been an edge to him. The kind of man who thought kindness was weakness. Now, driving through that same neighborhood with wind shoving the car sideways, I couldn't shake the thought that I should have pushed harder. Should have gone after her sooner. I slowed, squinting through the sheets of rain. House numbers blurred. Somewhere down this street, my daughter was lying unconscious on the floor, and my grandson was waiting in the dark. When I finally saw it, a small single-story rental with paint peeling off the siding, I almost missed the driveway. I pulled over. Headlights cutting across the lawn. The yard was overgrown. Grass waving in the wind. The house looked dead. I grabbed my flashlight from the glove compartment and stepped out. The rain hit like needles. The beam of light shook as my hand trembled. Claire first shouted, pushing through the storm. "It's Mom," no answer. Only the creak of a loose gutter and the sound of rain pounding the roof. I knocked on the front door. "Lucas, sweetheart." It's Grandma. Silence. I moved to the side of the house. Shoes slipping in the mud. The kitchen window was dark. Curtains half drawn. I pressed my face against the glass and saw shapes, chairs tipped over. Something on the floor that looked like a broken lamp. My pulse roared in my ears. "Damn it," I muttered. Backing up, I searched the ground and found a smooth rock from the flower bed. Heavy in my hand. The storm drowned out every other sound as I threw it hard. The glass shattered inward with a crack that seemed too loud for such an empty street. For a second I froze. Chest heaving. Waiting for a shout. A light. Anything. Nothing. I used my sleeve to clear the jagged edge and hoisted myself up. The window frame scraped my knee. And cold rainwater slid down my arm as I pulled myself through. My feet hit linoleum slick with water. The smell hit me first. Alcohol. Sweat. Something chemical and wrong. I lifted the flashlight. Empty bottles on the counter. Dishes piled high in the sink. Trash overflowing. And then I saw her. Claire. On the living room floor. One arm flung out. Her skin pale and damp. An open bottle of pills spilled across the carpet. Next to a half-empty glass of wine. For a moment I couldn't move. The world tilted. A sharp ringing in my ears. "Claire." My voice cracked. I dropped to my knees beside her. Fingers searching for a pulse. Faint. But there. Thank God. A small noise came from the hallway. A soft cry. Lucas. One turned. Flashlight beam, cutting through the dark. There he was. Standing at the end of the hall. Pajamas soaked. Hair plastered to his forehead. Holding that same stuffed bear I'd given him for Christmas. He ran to me. Arms wrapping around my neck. "Grandma." I was so scared. I held him tight. "It's okay. Baby. I've got you. We have to help Mommy," he whispered. "She won't wake up." "I know. Sweetheart. We're going to get help right now." I pulled my phone from my pocket. No signal. Just the gray SOS icon. The storm must have knocked the towers out. My mind raced. I couldn't carry them both through this weather. I looked at Claire. Her chest rising slowly. Shallow but steady. Lucas's small hand gripped mine. Trembling. "Listen to me." "Lucas," I said, trying to sound calm. "We need to get somewhere I can call for help. Stay close." "Okay," he nodded. Eyes wide. I wrapped my coat around him and led him toward the kitchen window. The rain outside looked like a moving wall. I lifted him up and helped him climb through first. Then followed, landing hard in the wet grass. When I looked up, lightning flashed. And for just a second, I saw it. Travis's truck parked across the street, half hidden behind the neighbor's hedge. The engine was off, but the lights were faintly glowing, like someone had just turned them out. My stomach dropped. I pulled Lucas closer and whispered, "We're leaving. Now." The storm swallowed us whole as we ran toward the car. The flashlight beam shaking wildly in the dark. The rain hit harder the moment I pushed Lucas into the back seat. My fingers fumbled with the seat belt as thunder cracked above us. He sat so still, clutching that bear like a lifeline, his eyes following my every move. I started the engine. headlights cutting through sheets of rain that made the street look like a river. The wipers screeched back and forth, barely keeping up. I gripped the wheel, every nerve in my body buzzing. My heart wouldn't slow down. Claire's face kept flashing in my mind, pale on the floor, her chest barely moving. I wanted to turn around, to drag her out too. But I knew I couldn't lift her. Not alone. Not in this storm. We had to get help. That was the only thought that made sense. Lucas's small voice came from the back seat. Is Mommy going to die? I swallowed hard. No. Baby. We're going to get her help. You did so good calling me. I'm proud of you. He didn't answer. Just stared out the window at the dark blur of houses sliding by. The storm swallowed everything. The radio kept cutting in and out. The emergency alert tone blaring through static. Flood warning in effect. Avoid travel. Too late for that. I turned onto Harbor Road. Tires slipping on standing water. My hands ached from holding the wheel so tight. Every few seconds, lightning lit up the world outside. And I caught glimpses of things that made me shiver. A trash can rolling across the street. A swing set twisting in the wind. I could feel the weight of regret pressing down harder than the rain. I'd known something was wrong for months. Claire's texts had gotten shorter. Her voice distant when we did talk. I'd told myself she just needed space. That she was healing from losing Mark. But deep down, I'd known she wasn't. The night after Mark's funeral came rushing back to me. The house filled with casseroles and sympathy cards. Claire had sat at the kitchen table, staring at her hands, while Walter tried to make her eat. She'd looked so small, her wedding ring spinning loosely on her finger. I'd reached for her hand, and she'd pulled it away. A few months later, she met Travis. He'd shown up at the house in a loud truck. Smelled like beer even then. Said he worked construction. Made good money. Took care of his woman. Claire had smiled in that brittle way that always meant she was pretending. If I'd pushed harder back then, maybe tonight wouldn't be happening. Another flash of lightning tore across the sky, and I realized I was drifting toward the wrong lane. I yanked the wheel back. Breath catching. Lucas gasped behind me. It's okay, I said quickly, forcing my voice steady. Grandma just got distracted. We're okay. He nodded, but didn't look convinced. His reflection in the rearview mirror looked too old for 8 years old. I wondered how long he'd been locked in that room. The road curved sharply toward the highway. A pickup truck passed going the other way, splashing water across my windshield. For a second, I couldn't see. I slowed, pulse pounding, until the wipers cleared the glass. Grandma, Lucas whispered. Was that Travis's truck? I glanced at him in the mirror. No. Honey. We left him behind. But I wasn't sure. As we reached the main highway, the rain thickened again, falling so hard it sounded like gravel. The headlights reflected off it, blinding me. I switched to low beams, leaning forward, searching for the yellow line that seemed to disappear under the water. 20 more miles. That's all. 20 more miles to the hospital in Newport. My phone buzzed. A new voicemail. My fingers shook as I hit play through the car's Bluetooth. It was Claire's voice. Slurred. Frightened. Mom. I'm sorry. He's angry. I shouldn't have. Please. If anything happens, then a crash. And silence. The message cut off, replaced by the sound of my own breathing echoing inside the car. I nearly pulled over right there. But I couldn't stop. Not now. Lucas looked at me, his eyes huge. Was that Mommy? Yes. My voice cracked. But she's going to be okay. You're safe with me. I wanted to sound strong, but I could hear the tremor in my own words. We drove for what felt like hours. The storm blurred everything, made time meaningless. At one point, I thought I saw headlights behind us, far back, following for a while before vanishing again. Maybe another car, Maybe not. I kept checking the mirror anyway. By the time we reached the bridge into town, the river below was swollen and wild. Logs slamming against the pillars. The wind rocked the car as I crossed. The guardrail trembling in the light. I gripped the wheel and whispered a prayer. Something half-remembered from Sunday school. Words tumbling out under my breath. Please, let her live. Please keep him safe. Please don't take anyone else from me. When we finally hit the city limits, the streetlights came back to life. I'd never been so grateful for electricity. The rain had eased to a steady pour. But my body still felt locked in the rhythm of panic. Lucas leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. Can we go home now? Not yet. Sweetheart, we have to get help first. He nodded, sitting back, eyes heavy with exhaustion. I could see the outline of the hospital up ahead, its windows glowing like a beacon in the dark. Relief hit me so hard I almost cried. As I pulled into the emergency entrance, a nurse rushed out, umbrella in hand. Ma'am, are you all right, my daughter? I said, words tumbling out. She's unconscious. She's at her house on Pine Street. Please. Someone has to go. And this is my grandson. He's been locked in. She held up a hand, already waving to someone inside. We'll call it in. Come in. Let's get you both checked first. Inside, the warmth of the ER hit me like a shock after the cold. The lights were too bright. The smell of antiseptic sharp in my nose. A paramedic took Lucas's hand, guiding him gently toward a chair. He looked up at me, still clutching the bear. Are the police coming? Grandma, yes, I said, my throat tight. They're on their way. I sat down beside him, drenched and shivering, watching water drip from my coat onto the white floor. My fingers were stiff, cut from the broken glass. But I barely felt the pain. All I could think of was Claire's voice in that message, broken and terrified. For the first time since that call came through, I let myself stop moving. My body trembled from exhaustion, but my mind wouldn't rest. Something about that voicemail, the way she said he's angry, wouldn't leave me. I looked at Lucas, his eyelids drooping as the warmth of the room began to calm him. His small hand rested on the bear's worn fur. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the clock above the nurse's station. The second hand ticked, steady and loud. We were safe for the moment. But deep down, I knew this storm wasn't over, not even close. The rain hit harder the moment I pushed Lucas into the back seat. My fingers fumbled with the seatbelt as thunder cracked above us. He sat so still, clutching that bear like a lifeline, his eyes following my every move. I started the engine, headlights cutting through sheets of rain that made the street look like a river. The wipers screeched back and forth, barely keeping up. I gripped the wheel, every nerve in my body buzzing. My heart wouldn't slow down. Claire's face kept flashing in my mind, pale on the floor, her chest barely moving. I wanted to turn around, to drag her out too. But I knew I couldn't lift her. Not alone. Not in this storm. We had to get help. That was the only thought that made sense. Lucas's small voice came from the back seat. Is Mommy going to die? I swallowed hard. No. Baby. We're going to get her help. You did so good calling me. I'm proud of you. He didn't answer, just stared out the window at the dark blur of houses sliding by. The storm swallowed everything. The radio kept cutting in and out, the emergency alert tone blaring through static. Flood warning in effect. Avoid travel. Too late for that. I turned onto Harbor Road, tires slipping on standing water. My hands ached from holding the wheel so tight. Every few seconds, lightning lit up the world outside, and I caught glimpses of things that made me shiver. A trash can rolling across the street, a swing set twisting in the wind. I could feel the weight of regret pressing down harder than the rain. I'd known something was wrong for months. Claire's texts had gotten shorter, her voice distant when we did talk. I'd told myself she just needed space, that she was healing from losing Mark. But deep down, I'd known she wasn't. The night after Mark's funeral came rushing back to me. The house filled with casseroles and sympathy cards. Claire had sat at the kitchen table, staring at her hands while Walter tried to make her eat. She'd looked so small, her wedding ring spinning loosely on her finger. I'd reached for her hand and she'd pulled it away. A few months later, she met Travis. He'd shown up at the house in a loud truck. Smelled like beer, even then. Said he worked construction. Made good money. Took care of his woman. Claire had smiled in that brittle way that always meant she was pretending. If I'd pushed harder back then, maybe tonight wouldn't be happening. Another flash of lightning tore across the sky, and I realized I was drifting toward the wrong lane. I yanked the wheel back, breath catching. Lucas gasped behind me. "It's okay," I said quickly, forcing my voice steady. "Grandma just got distracted. We're okay." He nodded, but didn't look convinced. His reflection in the rearview mirror looked too old for 8 years old. I wondered how long he'd been locked in that room. The road curved sharply toward the highway. A pickup truck passed going the other way, splashing water across my windshield. For a second I couldn't see. I slowed, pulse pounding, until the wipers cleared the glass. "Grandma," Lucas whispered. "Was that Travis's truck?" I glanced at him in the mirror. "No. Honey, we left him behind." But I wasn't sure. As we reached the main highway, the rain thickened again, falling so hard it sounded like gravel. The headlights reflected off it, blinding me. I switched to low beams, leaning forward, searching for the yellow line that seemed to disappear under the water. 20 more miles. That's all. 20 more miles to the hospital in Newport. My phone buzzed. A new voicemail. My fingers shook as I hit play through the car's Bluetooth. It was Claire's voice. Slurred. Frightened. "Mom. I'm sorry. He's angry. I shouldn't have, please. If anything happens, then a crash." And silence. The message cut off, replaced by the sound of my own breathing echoing inside the car. I nearly pulled over right there. But I couldn't stop. Not now. Lucas looked at me, his eyes huge. "Was that Mommy?" "Yes." My voice cracked. "But she's going to be okay. You're safe with me." I wanted to sound strong, but I could hear the tremor in my own words. We drove for what felt like hours. The storm blurred everything, made time meaningless. At one point, I thought I saw headlights behind us, far back, following for a while before vanishing again. Maybe another car. Maybe not. I kept checking the mirror anyway. By the time we reached the bridge into town, the river below was swollen and wild. Logs slamming against the pillars. The wind rocked the car as I crossed, the guardrail trembling in the light. I gripped the wheel and whispered a prayer. Something half-remembered from Sunday school. Words tumbling out under my breath. "Please let her live. Please keep him safe. Please don't take anyone else from me." When we finally hit the city limits, the streetlights came back to life. I'd never been so grateful for electricity. The rain had eased to a steady pour, but my body still felt locked in the rhythm of panic. Lucas leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can we go home now?" "Not yet, sweetheart. We have to get help first." He nodded, sitting back, eyes heavy with exhaustion. I could see the outline of the hospital up ahead, its windows glowing like a beacon in the dark. Relief hit me so hard, I almost cried. As I pulled into the emergency entrance, a nurse rushed out, umbrella in hand. "Ma'am, are you all right, my daughter?" I said, words tumbling out. "She's unconscious. She's at her house on Pine Street. Please. Someone has to go. And this is my grandson. He's been locked in. She held up a hand, already waving to someone inside. We'll call it in. Come in. Let's get you both checked first. Inside. The warmth of the ER hit me like a shock after the cold. The lights were too bright. The smell of antiseptic sharp in my nose. A paramedic took Lucas's hand, guiding him gently toward a chair. He looked up at me, still clutching the bear. Are the police coming? Grandma, yes. I said, my throat tight. They're on their way. I sat down beside him, drenched and shivering, watching water drip from my coat onto the white floor. My fingers were stiff, cut from the broken glass, but I barely felt the pain. All I could think of was Claire's voice in that message, broken and terrified. For the first time since that call came through, I let myself stop moving. My body trembled from exhaustion, but my mind wouldn't rest. Something about that voicemail, the way she said he's angry, wouldn't leave me. I looked at Lucas, his eyelids drooping as the warmth of the room began to calm him. His small hand rested on the bear's worn fur. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the clock above the nurse's station. The second hand ticked, steady and loud. We were safe for the moment. But deep down, I knew this storm wasn't over. Not even close. By the time the sun rose over the parking lot, my clothes were stiff with dried rain and hospital air. Lucas was still asleep in the chair beside me, his head against my arm. I didn't want to wake him, but the sight of a familiar figure walking through the sliding doors froze the air in my chest. Travis. He looked the same as always. A little too confident for someone who should have been worried sick. His jeans were dirty, his jacket soaked through, hair sticking up in clumps. When his eyes met mine, he smiled, slow and thin. Well, isn't this something? He said. You couldn't stay out of it, could you? I stood up, blocking his view of Lucas. She's upstairs. The doctors are taking care of her. Good, he said, stepping closer, lowering his voice. Because if you hadn't broken in last night, maybe the neighbors wouldn't have called the cops. Now I've got half the county thinking I did something wrong. You did, I said, louder than I meant to. A few nurses looked over. You left her there. You left them both there in that house. He spread his hands, pretending calm. I was working. Evelyn. I came home and found the mess you made. I was going to call for help. That's a lie, and you know it. Before he could respond, Detective Cortez appeared behind him, sharp as a blade. Mr. Cole. I'd like a word. Travis turned, his jaw tightening. Detective. I've already told your officers everything. I wasn't home. Cortez's voice stayed even. Then, you won't mind answering a few more questions. We'd like to confirm your timeline. He gave me one last look, something between anger and warning, before following her down the hall. I exhaled for the first time in minutes and sat back down, my legs trembling. Lucas stirred, rubbing his eyes. Grandma. Was that him? Yes. Sweetheart. But don't worry. The police are talking to him. He nodded, still half asleep. I don't like him. Me neither, I whispered. An hour later, Cortez returned. She looked calm, but her eyes told a different story. He's claiming Claire took the pills herself, she said quietly. Says you're trying to blame him because you don't like him. I laughed under my breath, sharp and humorless. That's his defense, that I don't like him. He's also accusing you of trespassing, she added. Since you broke the window. I stared at her. You have got to be kidding. I'm not. For now. It's just a statement. But you should be prepared. We'll sort out the truth. Mrs. Harper. It's just going to take time. Time. That was the one thing I didn't feel like I had. After she left, I found myself standing at the window overlooking the street. The rain had stopped. leaving everything washed clean and gray. For a moment, I felt small, like the whole world was moving and I was stuck in place, waiting for someone to believe me. Later that morning, a social worker arrived. Young, polite, and all business. Her name was Jenna Fields. She sat down with a clipboard, her voice practiced and careful. Mrs. Harper, I need to ask a few questions about your grandson. For his safety, I crossed my arms. For his safety, he's safer with me than anywhere else right now. I understand your concern, she said, eyes flicking between me and Lucas. But until we have a full picture, we need to consider all possibilities. That includes how he ended up in a locked house during a medical emergency. I clenched my jaw. Because his mother was unconscious and her boyfriend is a liar. She didn't flinch. I just need to hear your version. Then we'll review. I gave her everything. Every detail. But when she finished writing, her smile was polite. Empty. Thank you for your cooperation, Mrs. Harper. We'll be in touch once the investigation progresses. When she left, I sank back into the chair, exhausted. It felt like the more I tried to protect Lucas, the more invisible I became. That afternoon, I finally got permission to see Claire again. She was sitting up this time, pale but awake. Her voice was fragile. Mom. What happened? Why am I here? You mixed pills and alcohol, I said softly. You passed out. Lucas called me. You scared the hell out of us. She closed her eyes, tears leaking out. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to sleep. I was so tired. Tired of what? She hesitated, then shook her head. It doesn't matter. It does, I said, because Travis is downstairs, telling everyone you did this to yourself. Is that true? Her hands tightened around the blanket. He said he'd leave if I didn't stop arguing. We'd been fighting for days. About money. About everything. He said I was useless. That Mark would be ashamed of me. I took a few pills to calm down. Then I don't remember. My heart broke hearing her say his name like that. Like she still cared about his opinion. Claire. Listen to me. He's lying to you. Using you. He wants something. And I think it's more than control. Her eyes flicked up. Wary. What do you mean, your house? The insurance money? Everything Mark left. I heard him on the phone last night. Talking about papers you signed. Did you sign anything? She looked confused. Then frightened. He said it was refinancing. He said it would help with bills. My stomach turned. Did you read it? No. I trusted him. I sat back, the weight of it settling like a stone in my chest. Oh. Honey. A nurse came in just then to check her IV. I stepped out of the room, needing air. In the hallway, I found Cortez again. She must have seen my face because she asked. What did she say? She signed something she didn't understand. He tricked her. Cortez nodded slowly. I figured as much. We're pulling his financial records now. If he forged her signature or took out loans in her name, we'll find it. What about Lucas? I asked. That social worker made it sound like I was the problem. They have to follow procedure, she said gently. It's not personal. Feels pretty damn personal. She smiled faintly. I get it. Just hang tight. Okay, we'll get there. When I walked back into Claire's room, she was asleep again. I stood there for a long moment, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. For the first time in years, she looked peaceful. Lucas was waiting outside, sitting cross-legged on the hallway floor, coloring in a little notebook the nurse had given him. When he saw me, he smiled shyly. Mommy looks better, he said. She does, I told him, kneeling down beside him. And you helped her. Remember that? He nodded, his crayon pausing mid-stroke. Is Travis going to jail? I looked down the hall where the detective had disappeared. Not yet, I said quietly. But soon, as we left the hospital that evening, the sky had turned pink over the wet pavement. The air smelled of salt and rain. For the first time since that call, I felt something like hope. But when I reached my car and looked back toward the hospital entrance, I saw Travis standing under the awning, cigarette glowing between his fingers. Eyes fixed on me through the smoke. He smiled again. Slow. Cold. And I knew right then that he wasn't finished with us. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Travis's face behind that cigarette. The smirk that said he still had control. I sat by the window with a cup of coffee gone cold, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of waves beyond the trees. My house had always felt safe, but that night, it didn't. When morning came, I dropped Lucas off at school for the first time in weeks. He hesitated at the door, clutching his backpack straps. "You'll be here when I'm done." "Right, I'll be right here. Sweetheart, you have my word." He nodded and went inside, his small shoulders tense under the weight of too many fears for an 8-year-old. Watching him disappear through those doors nearly broke me. As soon as I got back to the car, I called Detective Cortez. "He's watching us," I said before she even said hello. "Outside the hospital last night. He was just standing there." She sighed. The sound of someone who'd had too many days like this. "We can't arrest him for standing on public property, Mrs. Harper. But I'll put a patrol car near your street for a few days. That won't stop him. It'll slow him down," she said. But even she didn't sound convinced. By noon, I was sitting in her office downtown, the smell of stale coffee and printer ink filling the air. She'd called me in to sign a statement about what Claire said before losing consciousness. As she reviewed my paperwork, another officer brought in a folder thick with printed pages. Cortez glanced through it, her eyes narrowing. "This is from the Financial Crimes Unit," she said. "They found multiple withdrawals from your daughter's account. Large ones. Over the last 6 months." My stomach turned. "How large?" "About 40,000 total. Most of it cash. Several transactions match locations of casinos and bars near where Mr. Face Cole works." I gripped the edge of the desk. He took her money. "Looks that way. We're waiting on the subpoena for property documents. If he forged her signature, it'll prove intent to defraud." "Intent to defraud," I repeated. "He almost killed her. That sounds a lot worse than fraud." She looked at me with that steady detective calm. "We need to build the case the right way, Mrs. Harper." Step by step. I leaned back, exhaustion washing over me again. "How much longer do you think she can wait? She's stable now. She's safe at the hospital. That gives us time to make sure this sticks." The words made sense. But they didn't comfort me. I'd seen enough of men like Travis to know that if they sensed control slipping, they didn't go quietly. On my way out of the station, I noticed a truck parked across the street. A green Ford with a dent in the door. I stopped cold. The driver's seat was empty, but I could see a cigarette burning in the ashtray. I turned around and went back inside. Cortez met me halfway down the hall, reading my face before I even spoke. "Where?" she asked. "Across the street." By the time she got out there with another officer, the truck was gone. I drove home with my hands trembling on the wheel. Every passing car looked like him. Every noise outside made my heart jump. I checked the locks twice before making dinner. That night, Claire called from the hospital. Her voice was clearer but heavy with shame. "Mom, they told me what they found in my bank account. I can't believe it. You trusted the wrong man," I said softly. "But it's not too late to make it right." She started crying. "They said I might lose custody of Lucas because of this." I closed my eyes. "You're not losing him. You just focus on getting better. I'll take care of him until you can." "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't deserve it, You're my daughter, I said. You'll always deserve a second chance. After we hung up, I sat at the table for a long time, staring at the photo of her and Mark from their wedding day. He'd been a good man, steady and kind. If he were here now, he'd be furious that someone like Travis had walked into their lives. 2 days later, Cortez called again. We got the property records. You were right. He transferred partial ownership of Claire's house to his name using a forged signature. My hand tightened around the phone. So arrest him. We're preparing the warrant now. I'll call you as soon as we have him in custody. Relief flooded me. Sharp and fleeting. I wanted to believe it was over. But just after dinner, the phone rang again. And this time, it wasn't Cortez. Evelyn. Travis's voice was too calm. You think you've won? Huh, you and your detective friend. I know what you told her. My heart thudded. You stay away from us. He laughed. Low and bitter. You think you can keep Lucas from me? That boy loves me. He calls me Dad. You're not his father. I said, my voice shaking. And you never will be. The line went dead. I called Cortez immediately. She told me not to engage with him, that they'd put an alert out in case he tried to leave town. But when I looked outside later, I saw the faint reflection of headlights in the trees near my driveway. Then they vanished. That night, sleep didn't come. I sat by the kitchen window again, clutching my coffee mug, listening to the house creak with the wind. Around midnight, the motion light over the garage flicked on. My pulse jumped. I waited, barely breathing. Nothing moved. Still, I didn't turn it off. I sat there until morning light crept over the trees, every nerve tight as wire. By the time I dropped Lucas off at school again, my hands were shaking from fatigue. He looked up at me as he climbed out of the car. You're okay, right? Grandma, I forced a smile. Of course. Sweetheart. But the truth was, I wasn't. That afternoon, I drove to the hospital to see Claire. Her room was empty. Panic rose in my chest until a nurse hurried over. She's fine, the nurse said. Detective Cortez had her moved to a secure room. Just precaution. When I found her, she was sitting up, pale but stronger. Mom, she said. They said Travis might try to visit. He won't get near you, I said, taking her hand. Not this time. Her eyes filled again. I can't believe I ever let him near Lucas. You're awake now, I told her. That's what matters. Just as I said it, Cortez entered, holding a folder. We got him, she said. Picked him up at his job an hour ago. He'll be arraigned tomorrow. I felt my knees give a little. Finally. But she didn't smile. He's already posted bail. He'll be out by morning. The room fell silent. Claire gripped my hand. Mom. What are we going to do? I looked at her. At the bruises still faint on her skin. And at the fear in her eyes. We're going to protect our family, I said quietly. No matter what it takes. Outside, the sky had gone dark again. Clouds gathering over the bay like the start of another storm. The wind outside grew stronger as the evening settled in, rattling the windows of my house. I had locked every door twice. Checked the back porch light 3 times. Lucas was asleep upstairs, his small frame barely visible beneath the blanket. I stood in the doorway, watching him breathe. One arm wrapped around that same old teddy bear, before turning off the lamp. Downstairs, the phone on the counter buzzed. I jumped at the sound. The caller ID showed Detective Cortez. We've confirmed the bail, she said when I answered. He's out. But there's a restraining order in place. He's not allowed within 100 yards of your daughter or grandson. That's a piece of paper, I said. He's not afraid of paper. I know, she said quietly. But it's a start. I've already spoken to the sheriff about increasing patrols around your neighborhood. You're not alone in this. After she hung up, I stood there listening to the hum of the refrigerator again. The house felt too quiet. I made myself a pot of coffee, just to hear another sound. By the next morning, I'd convinced Claire to come home with me after the hospital discharged her. She didn't argue. When we got there, she walked through the front door like someone stepping into another life. She looked around at the photos on the wall, at the smell of cinnamon candles, at the calm she hadn't had in years. This feels strange, she said softly. Safe, but strange. It's supposed to. I told her. You've lived in chaos for too long. For the first few days, things were almost normal. We cooked dinner together, watched old movies, read to Lucas before bed. I caught her smiling again. Not the forced kind, but real. Fleeting smiles that reminded me of the girl she used to be. I almost let myself believe we were free. Then, on the fourth night, I found tire tracks at the end of the driveway. They were fresh, deep from the rain, and I knew exactly whose they were. I didn't tell Claire that night. I didn't want her to panic. I called Cortez instead. She came out early the next morning with another officer. Crouched by the tracks. Took photos. Wrote notes. He's been circling, she said. The pattern looks deliberate. He's testing how close he can get without violating the order. Then stop him. She looked up. Tired but steady. We're doing everything we can. Mrs. Harper. But until he crosses that line, there's not much we can do. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Around midnight, I heard something outside. A low scrape like gravel, shifting under tires. I slipped on my robe and went to the window. Headlights glowed faint through the trees, then went out. I picked up the phone and dialed Cortez's number with shaking hands. She answered on the second ring. He's outside. I whispered. Stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone. Officers are on their way. I hung up and moved to the kitchen, keeping the lights off. The moonlight cast long shadows across the counter. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. A moment later, a soft knock came from the front porch. Slow, measured. Then his voice. Evelyn. You up? Every hair on my arm stood up. He knocked again. Harder this time. I just want to talk. I grabbed the phone. My fingers cold against the plastic. Go away. Travis. The police are coming. He laughed. Low and cruel. You called them again. You love wasting their time. Don't you? You're making this worse for everyone. The sound of a car pulling up cut through the night. Flashing lights bounced against the walls. Red and blue flickering through the curtains. Travis cursed under his breath. When the officers came to the door, he was already gone. They searched the property. Found cigarette butts near the porch. Muddy footprints by the side of the garage. Nothing else. Cortez came by again the next morning. She looked exhausted but determined. We'll file this as a violation of the restraining order, she said. It'll help us get a warrant for his arrest. Claire sat at the table, pale and shaking. I can't live like this. Mom, I can't keep wondering when he's going to show up again. You won't have to, I said. We'll make sure of it. But even as I said it, I felt the weight of the lie. A week passed. The sheriff's patrols came and went. Travis didn't show up again. Not at the house. Not at the school. Not anywhere. Cortez called it progress. I called it waiting for the next strike. One afternoon, I was in the backyard, hanging laundry, when I saw a small white envelope tucked under the porch railing. My stomach twisted. I looked around, half expecting him to be standing there. The yard was empty. I pulled it free with trembling hands and opened it. Inside was a single photo of me and Lucas leaving the grocery store the day before. Written across the bottom in black marker were the words, "You can't hide him forever." I dropped it like it burned. That evening, Cortez came to collect it. She handled it with gloves, sealed it in a bag. We'll run it for Prince. Though I doubt he was that careless. Do you really think he's capable of hurting us? I asked quietly. She met my eyes. I think he's capable of anything when he feels like he's losing control. After she left, I sat at the table for hours, staring at that empty spot where the envelope had been. Every creak of the house made me flinch. The next morning, Claire came down early, her hair tied back, eyes clear for the first time in weeks. I called a lawyer, she said. She's going to help me file for full custody and press charges for fraud. I felt something in my chest unclench. That's a good start. She said I'll need to testify. She added, and so will you. Then we will. I said, whatever it takes. Later that day, while Claire was making lunch, I went out to check the mail. The air smelled like salt and pine. For a brief moment, everything felt normal again. But when I reached the mailbox, I froze. A dead bird lay inside. Wings stiff. Its feathers matted with dirt. I looked up, scanning the empty road, the trees, the horizon. Nothing but silence. I went back inside, closed the door, and locked it again. Claire saw my face and asked what was wrong. I shook my head. Nothing. Just junk mail. I didn't tell her. Not yet. She needed her strength for the hearing ahead. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat by the window again, the moonlight spilling across the floor. I thought about all the ways this could end. And then I thought about the way it had to. Because no matter what the law said, no piece of paper was going to protect my family. Not from a man like Travis Cole. The night felt heavier than usual. Like the air itself was warning me. I sat in my chair by the window again. The same one that had become my post since the first threat. The porch light threw a weak circle across the yard. But everything beyond it was swallowed by darkness. I kept telling myself to sleep. But I couldn't. I didn't trust the quiet anymore. Around 2 a.m, I heard a car engine in the distance. Not speeding. Just idling. Slow. Deliberate. The sound grew louder. Then stopped, somewhere near the end of the road. I leaned forward. Heart hammering. Headlights flickered between the trees. Then went out. He was back. I knew it before I saw him. I stood, moving slowly so the floorboards wouldn't creak, and reached for the phone on the table. My hands were shaking so bad I nearly dropped it. I called Cortez's direct line. But it rang and rang before going to voicemail. I whispered into the phone anyway, telling her he was here again. That I was done waiting for help that always came too late. A creak on the porch froze me. Then a shadow crossed the light near the front steps. Travis's voice came through the door, low and mocking. You think you can keep me away from what's mine? She belongs with me. Evelyn, you can't change that. I didn't answer. I grabbed the baseball bat from behind the umbrella stand and pressed my back to the wall. My pulse thudded in my ears. He jiggled the doorknob once. Then again. Harder. You should have stayed out of it. Upstairs. I heard movement. Claire's voice. Hushed. Panicked. Then Lucas's small footsteps. I called up quietly. Stay in your room. Both of you. Then came the sound of breaking glass. It came from the side of the house this time. Near the kitchen. The same way I'd entered Claire's place that night. My stomach turned at the sound. But my hands tightened on the bat. He was inside. I could hear him moving through the kitchen. Slow and steady. Drawers sliding open. The shuffle of boots on tile. I stepped out just enough to see the faint outline of his figure against the dim light from the window. Travis, I said, my voice shaking but loud. You need to leave right now. The police are on their way. He laughed. You keep saying that, but they never come fast enough. He stepped closer, and I saw the metal glint of something in his hand. A wrench, maybe. or a crowbar. I took a step back, keeping the bat raised. I'm not afraid of you, I said. You already took too much from this family. You're not taking anything else. He smirked. You really think you can stop me? Old lady, that did it. I swung before he finished the sentence. The bat connected with his arm. A solid crack that sent him stumbling back. He cursed, dropping the metal tool. And I swung again. This time, he caught the bat mid-air, twisting it out of my hands. He shoved me hard. My back hit the counter, pain shooting up my ribs. Then, Claire appeared at the top of the stairs. Stop, she screamed. Travis. Please stop. He turned toward her voice. You want to see what she made me do, don't you touch her, I shouted, lunging forward. He shoved me again. But I grabbed at his sleeve, pulling him off balance. The wrench clattered to the floor, and we both went down. My shoulder hit hard, but I didn't let go. Claire came running down, grabbed Lucas and pushed him behind her. She grabbed the cordless phone from the wall and started shouting into it. He's here. He broke in. Send help, Travis roared, twisting out of my grip. He stumbled to his feet, eyes wild, chest heaving. You're ruining everything. Claire. We could have had it all if not for her. She stood her ground, voice shaking. We never had anything. You lied. You used me. You hurt my son. For the first time. Something flickered across his face. Not guilt. Not quite. More like disbelief that she'd finally said it. Before he could respond, red and blue lights flashed through the windows. The sound of tires screeched outside. He looked toward the door, then back at us. You called them again, he hissed. Claire stepped closer, voice trembling but fierce. Get out. Travis, you're done. He hesitated, jaw tight, then ran for the back door. I tried to go after him, but Cortez and 2 officers were already there, guns drawn. Down, hands where we can see them, she shouted. He froze, then slowly dropped to his knees. When they cuffed him, I finally exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. My hands were still shaking when Cortez came inside. She looked at the shattered glass, the broken lamp, the chaos of the kitchen. Then she turned to me. You okay? I've been better, I said, voice rough. Claire was holding Lucas, both of them crying quietly. Cortez's tone softened. He's not getting out this time. We caught him violating the order with a weapon. That's enough to keep him locked up for a long time. I nodded, but my knees gave a little. She guided me to a chair, and I sat down hard. The adrenaline drained out all at once. When the officers took him away, I went upstairs and checked on Lucas. He was curled on the bed, his eyes wide and glassy. Is he gone? He whispered. Yes, sweetheart. He's gone. He nodded, then reached for my hand. You hit him, he said, almost in awe. I smiled weakly. I had to protect my family. He didn't say anything after that. He just squeezed my hand until his breathing slowed and sleep took over. Later, as the sun started to rise, I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by shards of glass and the faint smell of metal and fear. Cortez had promised to send someone to fix the window. But for now, I didn't care. The wind was coming through the hole in soft, cold gusts, carrying the first light of morning. Claire sat across from me, her eyes red but steady. He's really gone this time, she said. For now, I replied quietly. But we'll still lock the doors. She nodded. You saved us. Mom. I looked at her, at the bruises finally fading from her skin, at the determination replacing the fear in her eyes. No, I said. We saved each other. The coffee pot beeped softly behind us. The storm outside had passed, but the world still felt fragile, like one wrong move could shatter it again. I poured us both a cup and watched the light spread through the trees. For the first time in a long while, it felt like maybe, just maybe, we could breathe again. The days after the break-in blurred together. The police came and went. Bored repairmen fixed the window, and the neighbors dropped off casseroles that none of us really ate. Claire barely slept. She kept checking the locks, pacing the hallway at night, jumping at every sound. Lucas clung to her whenever she moved from one room to another. The fear still lived in all of us, even if the house was quiet again. Detective Cortez stopped by 2 mornings later. She looked tired but satisfied. He's being charged with breaking and entering, assault, and violating the restraining order. The DA's confident we can make the charges stick. I nodded, though my chest still felt tight. So he's really going away this time, as long as the judge doesn't grant him bail again, she said. And after last week, I doubt she will. Claire sat at the table, hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold. Do I have to testify? Probably, Cortez said gently. But you'll have support. We'll be there with you every step of the way. After she left, Claire whispered, I don't know if I can face him again. You can, I said, my voice steady though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. You already did once. You saved Lucas that night. You saved yourself. She didn't answer. But later I saw her standing by the window, watching the police car drive away. The look in her eyes wasn't fear anymore. It was something heavier. Resolve. Maybe. By the end of the week, life started to find a fragile rhythm. I took Lucas to school every morning, packed his lunch, and waved from the curb while he ran toward the playground. Claire started therapy sessions at the community center downtown. I saw the effort she made every day, forcing herself out of bed, keeping her hands busy, trying to live again. One evening, I found her sitting on the porch, staring at the horizon where the ocean met the sky. The air smelled like salt and pine. You ever think about how fast everything can fall apart? She asked quietly. All the time, I said. But I also think about how fast it can start to heal. She smiled faintly, but her eyes stayed on the horizon. When I met him, I thought he was saving me. I didn't see what he was really taking. You see it now, I said. That's what matters. The trial started 2 months later. The courthouse smelled of paper and old coffee, and the air felt heavy with waiting. Travis sat at the defense table in a gray suit that didn't fit him. Hair cut too short. Face set in that same smug expression. He looked around the courtroom like he still owned it. Claire sat beside the prosecutor, her hands trembling as she waited to be called. I sat behind her with Lucas and a social worker. I could feel the tension radiating off her shoulders. When the judge entered, everything went still. The charges were read. The lawyers spoke their parts. And then it was Claire's turn. She walked to the witness stand. Every step slow and deliberate. When she raised her hand to swear in, I saw how badly she was shaking. The prosecutor asked her about the night of the break-in, about the months before it, about the money he'd taken. Her voice quivered at first, but then it grew stronger. She told them how he isolated her, made her doubt herself, how she stopped recognizing the woman in the mirror. When she said the words, "He locked my son in a room," a murmur rippled through the courtroom. Even the bailiff shifted uncomfortably. Travis sat there with his arms crossed, eyes narrowed, but his smirk was gone. Then his lawyer stood up, a man in an expensive suit with a voice like sandpaper. He tried to twist her words, saying she was exaggerating, that she'd been drunk that night, that her memory couldn't be trusted. Claire didn't flinch. "I remember everything," she said, her voice clear now, "and I'm not afraid of him anymore." When she stepped down, I felt tears sting my eyes. Lucas leaned into me, whispering, "She did good, Grandma." "She did," I said, my voice breaking. I took the stand next. I told them about the call from Lucas. The night I broke into the house. The condition I found them in. The prosecutor showed photos of the room where Lucas had been locked. The jury went quiet. By the time it was over, I was shaking too. But in a different way. It felt like all the fear we'd been holding in had finally been spoken aloud. The verdict came 3 days later. Guilty on all counts. The judge's voice was calm but final when she read the sentence. 10 years in prison. No parole for the first 7. Claire squeezed my hand so tight it hurt. When the deputies led him out, Travis turned once and looked at us. His eyes met mine for half a second. Dark and empty. I stared right back until they took him through the door. Outside. The sunlight felt strange. Almost too bright. Claire stood on the courthouse steps. The wind lifting her hair. Tears streaking down her cheeks. She wasn't crying from sadness this time. It was release. He's gone, she said softly. He's really gone. For good, I said. Now we can breathe again. Lucas ran up to her, throwing his arms around her waist. Does this mean we can go home now? Claire knelt down, holding him close. Yes. Baby. We can go home. That night, back at my house, the 3 of us sat at the kitchen table, eating dinner together. No one said much. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. After Lucas went to bed, Claire poured herself a cup of tea and sat across from me. You ever think about what's next? She asked. I think about tomorrow, I said. That's enough for me. She smiled. Really smiled this time. I want to start over. Mom. Maybe move somewhere new. Near the coast. A small place. Just me and Lucas. A fresh start. I nodded. You deserve that. She reached across the table and took my hand. So do you. The wind picked up outside, rustling through the trees. I looked around the kitchen, at the photos on the walls, at the faint scratches on the counter from years of cooking, at the life that had survived more storms than one woman should have to face. You'll always have a home here. I told her. I know, she said. But I think it's time we stop surviving and start living again. Her words stayed with me long after she went to bed. I sat there, listening to the house breathe, feeling the kind of quiet that didn't feel dangerous anymore. It felt like healing. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for something bad to happen. I was just waiting for morning. The next morning came soft and golden. Sunlight spilling through the kitchen curtains like it had been waiting for us. Claire was already awake, sitting at the table with a notebook open and a cup of coffee between her hands. She looked different somehow. Lighter, though there were still shadows under her eyes. I couldn't sleep, she said. I kept thinking about everything we need to do. I have to find a new job. Maybe a new school for Lucas. I don't even know where to start. I sat across from her, stirring my own coffee. You start by breathing. One step at a time. You've got time now. Honey, you're not running anymore. She smiled faintly. It still feels strange. Not being scared every second. It'll stop feeling strange eventually. I said. That's what healing does. It sneaks up on you. Later that day, we took a drive along the coast. Lucas sat in the back seat, humming to a song on the radio. The window rolled down, and the wind in his hair. I hadn't seen him smile that wide in years. The ocean glittered beside us, waves breaking against the rocks in a rhythm that felt like peace. Claire pointed to a small town up ahead. That's Seabrook, she said. I saw a listing there last week. A 2-bedroom cottage for rent. I looked at her and could tell she'd already decided. You want to move there? She nodded. It's small. Quiet. Good schools. Feels like the kind of place we could start over. It took us 2 weeks to pack up the essentials. The cottage was old but charming, with white shutters and a wraparound porch that looked out on the water. When we pulled up in the moving truck, Lucas ran straight to the yard. chasing seagulls and laughing. Claire stood beside me, hands on her hips, tears in her eyes. Looks like home, she said. It is, I replied. I stayed with them the first few nights to help them settle in. We unpacked boxes, painted the living room, and fixed the creaky back door that slammed in the wind. At night, Claire would tuck Lucas in and then join me on the porch with a glass of tea. The sound of waves filled the silence between us. One evening she said, "You know, I used to think strength meant keeping everything together, pretending everything was fine. But now I think it's just getting up again. Even after everything breaks." I looked at her, proud in a way words couldn't cover. That's exactly what it is. Life started to settle into something new. Lucas made friends at school, came home covered in sand from the playground. Claire found a job at the local diner, working mornings so she could pick him up in the afternoon. I stayed most weekends, helping around the house, cooking big dinners like we used to when Mark was still alive. One afternoon, about a month after the move, Claire came home with a stack of mail in her hands. She handed me a letter with the return address of the state correctional facility. My stomach dropped. "It's from him," she said quietly. "They said he's allowed to send one letter to family before sentencing is finalized." I didn't want to open it, but Claire did. She unfolded the paper slowly, her hands steady but pale. He'd written 3 short paragraphs. No apology, no regret, just words about how he'd been wronged, how he still loved her, how he'd be back someday. At the bottom, his signature was nothing but a scrawl. Claire stared at it for a long time before tearing it clean in half. "That's the last thing he'll ever say to me," she said. I took the pieces from her and dropped them in the trash. "Good," I said. "Let the garbage stay where it belongs." After that, she stopped talking about him entirely. It was like the name itself had lost its power. She filled her time with work, with Lucas, with small, ordinary joys. Sometimes I'd catch her humming while doing dishes or reading on the porch, and it would make my chest ache in the best way. Spring came early that year. The garden bloomed wild and bright, daffodils pushing through the soil like they'd been waiting for her. Lucas brought home a painting from school of his family. Just 3 stick figures under a yellow sun. He'd written me and Mom and Grandma in uneven letters. Claire hung it on the fridge. "We're finally okay," she said softly. One afternoon, while I was sweeping the porch, Claire came outside with a manila folder. "My lawyer called," she said. "The property back in Millbrook finally transferred back to my name. The judge nullified the documents Travis forged. Everything's officially mine again." I leaned on the broom and smiled. "That's a win." She nodded. "I don't want to go back there, though. Not ever. That house feels haunted." "Then don't," I said. "Let it stay empty. Let it be a ghost." That night, we had dinner together. Just the 3 of us. The sound of the ocean steady in the background. Lucas told us about a science project he'd done at school, how his volcano exploded better than anyone else's. Claire laughed until she cried, wiping her eyes with her napkin. After Lucas went to bed, I lingered outside on the porch. The air was cool and smelled like salt and rain. I could hear the distant foghorn from the lighthouse down the coast. Claire joined me after a while, leaning on the railing. "You ever think Dad's watching all this?" she asked. I looked up at the stars, the faint shimmer across the sky. I think he never stopped. We stood there in silence for a long time, the kind that didn't need words. Before heading in, she said, "I'm going to change my name back to Morrison. I want Lucas to carry it too. It's his father's name, and it's ours, not his." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. When I finally went to bed, I lay awake, listening to the rhythm of the waves. For the first time in years, the sound didn't remind me of storms. It reminded me of home. The next morning, Sunlight poured through the kitchen again. I found a note from Claire on the counter. She'd taken Lucas for pancakes before school. Said she'd be back by 10. The smell of coffee lingered in the air. Warm and familiar. I looked around the little cottage. At the pictures already hung on the walls. At the laughter that seemed to live in every corner. We had made it through something most people don't. And for the first time, I realized we hadn't just survived. We'd started to live again. The weeks that followed felt like sunlight after a long winter. Claire and Lucas settled into their new routine. And I drove down every few days with groceries or just to visit. The cottage looked more alive each time I came by. Claire had painted the front door blue, planted herbs along the porch, and strung soft yellow lights that glowed at night like tiny stars. The shadows that used to cling to her eyes had faded into something calmer. One morning, she called while I was making breakfast. "Mom, I just got the job at the elementary school," she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Teacher's aide. Full-time. With benefits." I laughed, the sound echoing through my kitchen. "That's wonderful. Sweetheart, I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you," she said. "Sure you could," I told her. "You just needed to remember who you were before all that mess." She came by that weekend with Lucas. He ran straight into my arms the way he used to when he was little, his backpack bumping against my side. "Grandma, we saw a whale from the beach," he said breathlessly. It was huge. Claire smiled behind him, holding a pie she'd baked. "Blueberry. Don't get too excited. The crust's uneven. It's perfect," I said, taking it from her. "You know I don't care about crusts." That evening, the three of us sat on the porch swing while the sun sank behind the trees. Lucas dozed off between us, his head resting against Claire's arm. The sound of crickets filled the air. "He's finally happy again," Claire whispered. "So are you," I said. She smiled, a real one, and leaned her head on my shoulder. For the first time, yeah. The peace held for months. Claire thrived at her job. Lucas made friends and brought home drawings that filled the fridge. Sometimes, when I visited, I'd catch Claire talking to other parents at school or laughing with neighbors. She was rebuilding her world. One small, steady piece at a time. But peace has a way of testing you. In early spring, I got a call from Detective Cortez. Her tone was careful. "Mrs. Harper, I didn't want you to hear this from anyone else. Travis filed an appeal." I felt my stomach drop. "What does that mean?" "It doesn't mean he's getting out," she said. "But he's trying to reduce his sentence. Claims there were procedural errors in the trial. It's not unusual. But it could bring up old wounds." "How long does it take?" "Months. Maybe longer. We'll keep you informed." After we hung up, I sat in silence. I didn't tell Claire right away. I wanted her to have a few more days of peace before I dragged the past back into her new life. When I finally did tell her, she went still. Then she nodded slowly. "He won't win. He can't." "No. He can't," I said, "but we'll be ready if he tries." She exhaled and gave me a small smile. "We always are." Still, the news shook something loose in both of us. The nightmares came back for a few nights. Lucas would wake up crying, saying he dreamed about the dark room again. Claire sat with him, holding him until he fell asleep. When she came downstairs, her face was pale. "I thought we were done with this," she whispered. I put my arm around her. Sometimes, healing doesn't move in a straight line. We went back to our routines. But the unease lingered. Every knock at the door made me tense. Every unfamiliar car made me glance twice. I knew he was locked up. But I also knew the shadow he'd left behind didn't vanish that easily. Then, one afternoon, Cortez called again. "Good news this time," she said. The appeal was denied. The judge called it baseless. He'll serve the full term. I closed my eyes, the relief washing through me like warm water. Thank you, I said. You don't have to thank me, she replied. You fought for your family. You did the hard part. I drove to Seabrook that evening to tell Claire in person. When I arrived, she was sitting on the porch with a book in her lap and the ocean wind tugging at her hair. Lucas was chasing fireflies in the yard. She looked up when she saw me and smiled. You have that look? What happened? The appeals denied, I said. It's over for good this time. Her eyes filled instantly. For good, I said again. She stood and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Lucas came running over, asking what was going on. And when we told him, he grinned. So he can't ever hurt us again, no. Sweetheart, Claire said, he can't. We had dinner together that night. Simple and warm. The kind of meal that feels like closure. Afterward, Claire brought out a small box she'd kept tucked in a drawer. Inside were things from before it all happened, her wedding ring, an old photo of Mark, a drawing Lucas had made years ago. She added a new photo to the box. One of the three of us standing in front of the cottage. This is the life we built after everything, she said, and it's the one that matters. I helped her bury the box in the garden under the rosebush she'd planted last month. The soil was soft, the air full of salt and night sounds. When we finished, she brushed her hands off and said quietly, "That's the last piece of him I'll ever carry." We stood there for a while, watching the stars come out. The moonlight glinted off the water beyond the dunes. Calm and endless. Inside, Lucas was already asleep on the couch, curled up under a blanket. Claire pulled it up to his chin and kissed his forehead. He's growing fast, she said. I want him to remember this part. Not what came before. He will, I told her. Kids remember love more than pain when you give them enough of it. She turned to me with tears in her eyes. You were right about everything. Mom, I should have listened sooner. No, I said softly. You learned when you were ready. That's what matters. Outside, the sea was calm, the waves brushing the shore in slow, even rhythm. The house glowed warm behind us, the kind of light that comes after too many storms. We didn't say anything else. We didn't have to. For the first time, I knew without doubt that the past couldn't reach us anymore. We had turned survival into something stronger. We had turned it into a life. Spring drifted into summer, and Seabrook felt like a postcard brought to life. The air smelled of salt and jasmine. The ocean hummed in the distance. And the days stretched long and easy. Life had become quiet in the way I used to pray for. Claire's laughter filled the little house again, and Lucas spent every spare moment outside, chasing gulls or collecting shells along the shore. I visited almost every weekend, bringing homemade jam or just myself, happy to be where peace finally lived. One Saturday morning, I arrived to find Claire in the garden, wearing a floppy hat and gloves, pruning the rose bushes. Lucas sat nearby, building a fort out of driftwood. She looked up when I stepped out of the car and smiled. You're just in time. We were about to make lemonade. Lemonade and roses, I said, setting down the pie I'd brought. You've gone full domestic goddess. She laughed, brushing dirt from her cheek. I never thought this would be my life again. That's the beauty of it, I said. The quiet things come back when you finally make space for them. That afternoon, while Lucas played with a neighbor's dog, we sat on the porch swing, drinking lemonade and watching the tide roll in. Claire leaned back, her eyes half closed. You ever think about how fast it all changed? She asked. 1 year ago, I was afraid to go to sleep. Now I wake up excited to see what the day brings. I think about it every day, I said. You fought for this. You earned it. Her phone buzzed on the table beside her. She glanced at it, then frowned. Unknown number. A chill ran through me, instinctive and sharp. "Don't answer," I said automatically. She hesitated, then pressed ignore. "It's probably spam." I wanted to believe that, but old habits don't die easily. Later that evening, after dinner, Lucas brought me a seashell he'd found. "Grandma, it sounds like the ocean if you hold it close," he said. I pressed it to my ear, listening to the soft hum. For a moment, I thought I could hear my own heartbeat inside it. Claire watched us from the kitchen doorway, smiling. The golden light behind her made her hair look like a halo. "He's been talking about starting a shell collection," she said. "Maybe we'll get a shadow box and display them." "You should," I said. "Let him fill it with good memories." After Lucas went to bed, we sat out back again. The night was warm and still, the air thick with the scent of roses. I looked over at her and said, "You really are happy, aren't you?" She nodded slowly. "Yeah. For the first time in forever. I don't feel like I'm waiting for something bad to happen." I smiled, though something in me hesitated. "That's how you know it's real." We talked for hours. About little things mostly. Like her plans to start a weekend art class at the school and Lucas's obsession with baseball. It was late when I finally left. Of the road back to my place, quiet under the moonlight. The next morning, Claire called again. "I got another unknown number," she said. "They didn't leave a message." My stomach clenched. "You tell Cortez, not yet. Maybe it's nothing. I don't want to bother her over some telemarketer. It's never nothing." "Claire," I said. "You of all people should know that." She promised she'd keep an eye on it, and I tried to let it go. But the unease stayed with me. That afternoon, I drove back to Seabrook unannounced. When I pulled into her driveway, I noticed a white envelope tucked under her windshield wiper. I froze. "Claire." I called as I picked it up. The handwriting on the front was messy, almost childlike, and all it said was her name. I opened it before she could. Inside was a single photo of her and Lucas at the beach, taken from a distance. No note. No explanation. Her face drained of color. How did they even get that picture? I felt my pulse in my throat. "You're calling Cortez." "Now." Within an hour. The detective arrived, driving from 2 towns over. She studied the photo with a grim expression. "Could be nothing," she said, though her tone betrayed the words. "Could be someone from town who doesn't realize how this looks. Or it could be him." I said, "You said he's locked up." "He is," Cortez said. "And there's no way he could have sent this himself. But maybe someone else did." Claire looked stricken. "Why would anyone do that? To scare you?" I said quietly. "Because he still thinks he can." Cortez promised to check visitation records and mail logs from the prison. "We'll find out where this came from," she said. After she left, Claire stood at the kitchen sink, staring out the window. Her hands were gripping the counter so tightly, her knuckles turned white. "I can't go through this again." "Mom." "I can't." I walked over and put my hand over hers. "You're not alone this time. We'll handle it together." She turned toward me, tears spilling down her cheeks. "It's like he's still out there, watching." "He's not," I said firmly. "He's behind bars. But fear likes to play tricks. Don't let it take root again." That night, neither of us slept much. I stayed in the guest room, listening to every creak of the house. Around midnight, I got up and checked the locks. Everything was secure. The porch lights still on. The ocean beyond the yard was black and endless, the waves crashing in steady rhythm. At dawn, Claire knocked on my door. Her face was pale, eyes puffy. "There was a car parked down the street last night," she said. "It was there for hours. When I went to look again, it was gone." I rubbed my temples, trying to steady my breath. "Did you get the plates?" "No." It was too dark. I called Cortez again. She said she'd send someone to patrol the area. But I could tell she was as worried as I was. By afternoon, the tension had worn us both thin. Lucas came home from school with a drawing of a lighthouse and waves. He held it up proudly. "Look, Grandma, it's where the light never goes out." I took it from him, staring at the bright yellow beam cutting through the storm he'd drawn around it. "It's beautiful," I said softly. "You're a good artist." He smiled. And for a moment, the fear lifted. But as I glanced toward the window, I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere beyond that horizon, something was stirring again. The peace we'd built felt fragile now, like glass in my hands. And I knew deep down that whatever was coming next, we'd have to face it just as fiercely as we did before. The feeling didn't leave me for days. That quiet sense of being watched followed me like a shadow. Every time I looked out the window and saw the ocean stretching into forever, I wondered if there was something out there just beyond the light. I didn't tell Claire how heavy it felt. She was already stretched thin, pretending to be calm for Lucas's sake. Cortez called again midweek. We checked every visitor log, every call, every piece of mail. She said, "Nothing connects to him. Whoever sent that photo did it from outside the system. So it's someone on the outside, doing his bidding," I said. "Or someone trying to rattle her. Either way, we're tightening the watch." After I hung up, I walked out onto the porch. The sea breeze was sharp with salt, carrying the smell of coming rain. Claire joined me a few minutes later, wrapping a sweater around her shoulders. "Was that her?" she asked. "Yes. She's looking into it. They'll find whoever's behind this." Claire leaned on the railing, eyes fixed on the horizon. "I'm not scared of him anymore," she said quietly. "But I am scared of what fear does to people. I don't want to live like we're always waiting for something bad again." "You're not," I told her. "You already made it out of the dark. Fear's just trying to pull you back. You don't have to let it." The storm rolled in later that night, sudden and wild. The rain hit the roof hard, and the wind made the porch lights flicker. Lucas slept through most of it, but Claire and I stayed downstairs, drinking coffee and pretending not to listen to the thunder. Sometime after midnight, the power went out. The house went black except for the faint glow of lightning outside. Claire lit a candle, her hands shaking just a little. "I hate storms," she whispered. "Me too," I said. "But they pass." Then, faint but clear, came the crunch of gravel from outside. We froze. Claire looked at me, her eyes wide. "You heard that?" "Right." I nodded and reached for my phone. But there was no signal. The wind howled louder, drowning everything else. We waited, listening. Nothing but the sound of the rain against the windows. I started to think maybe it was just a branch falling when another sound came. Closer this time. Footsteps on the porch. I put a finger to my lips and motioned for her to stay still. The candle flickered as we both strained to hear. Then came a single knock on the door. Slow, deliberate. Claire's breath caught. "Mom." I grabbed the flashlight from the counter and switched it on, aiming it at the door. "Who's there?" I called, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding. No answer. Another knock. Then Cortez's voice cut through the storm. "Evelyn." "It's me. Open up." I nearly dropped the light. Claire rushed to the door and unlocked it. The detective stood there in a soaked jacket, rain streaming down her face. "Sorry to scare you," she said. "We traced a call that came into dispatch from a gas station near the prison. A man matching his brother's description was asking about your address. We thought you should know." Claire went pale. "His brother?" Cortez nodded. "Half-brother. Different last name. He's got a record too. We're putting a car on this street tonight." The storm kept us all awake until dawn. Cortez sat by the window, sipping bad coffee and scanning the road. Nothing happened. When the rain finally stopped, she left 2 officers parked near the house and told us to rest. By morning, the world looked brand new. The sun rose over a sky scrubbed clean. The ocean calm again. Claire made pancakes. Lucas talked about building a sandcastle after school. And for the first time in days, laughter filled the kitchen again. A week passed without another incident. No more letters. No strange cars. No phone calls. Cortez called to say the brother had been picked up on unrelated charges across the state. He won't be bothering you anymore, she said. When Claire hung up, she stood there for a long time, the relief sinking in like sunlight through glass. Then she smiled and said, "I think we can finally exhale now." I smiled back. "Then let's do it properly." We spent that afternoon at the beach. Lucas built his sandcastle, bigger than any he'd made before. Claire helped him dig the moat while I sat in my chair watching them. The sound of the surf steady and gentle. The wind caught her hair. And for a moment, she looked like the same girl who used to run down these shores years ago. Free and unafraid. When the tide came in and washed the castle away, Lucas just laughed. "It's okay," he said. "We can build it again." Claire looked at me and smiled. "That's the lesson. Isn't it, always?" I said. "You just keep building." That evening, we walked home barefoot. The sky glowing pink and gold behind us. The porch lights flickered on as we reached the house, warm and welcoming. Inside, everything smelled like salt and sugar and safety. As Claire tucked Lucas into bed, I heard her say softly, "You're safe now. You always will be." He mumbled something back, half asleep, and she kissed his forehead. When she came back downstairs, she poured 2 cups of tea and handed me one. "You think we'll ever stop looking over our shoulders? Maybe not completely," I said. "But one day, it won't be fear we feel. It'll just be awareness. And that's okay. Awareness keeps you strong." She nodded. Thoughtful. "I used to think surviving was the end of the story. Now, I see it's just the beginning." I smiled. "You sound like me now." She laughed. That soft, full sound that always made everything seem right. Guess I learned from the best. The wind outside was calm. The moon high over the water. The house felt alive, not haunted. The silence that followed wasn't empty anymore. It was peaceful. I looked around the room, at the small pieces of our lives that had been rebuilt from ruin. At the photos, the flowers, the love that had survived every test. If I've learned anything, it's that storms don't last forever. They break things. Yes. But they also show you what's worth rebuilding. They remind you that even after everything, there can still be light. Still be laughter. Still be second chances. So if you've been through your own kind of storm, don't let it define you. Let it teach you. Let it make you stronger. Because one day, you'll wake up like we did. Look around. And realize the quiet isn't empty anymore. It's peace. And peace, my dear, is the sweetest sound in the world. Now, tell me, would you have done the same to protect your family, or would your story have taken a different turn? I'd love to hear what you'd have done if you were in my shoes.